What's going on, guys? So the other day, I was doing some market research for a client that was launching a functional food product to baby boomers. And I was kind of helping them answer some questions around baby boomers' relation to functional CPG, um, trying to understand maybe how baby boomers want to be marketed to in these specific products, which value propositions kind of speak most clearly to them, what from an influencer, if anything, makes sense from a go-to-market strategy, what kind of media we want to focus on, and then also around the product specifications. What are baby boomers looking for comparable to what most of us think about of driving some of this functional CPG. Millennials, what is the differences, what are the nuances around those very different generations. And while I was looking at some of this research, I stumbled across a Chicago-based marketing firm that did a recent kind of analysis around social media posts. I think they looked at almost 500,000 digital and social media posts around like supplements and supplement interests. And this analysis was done in a way that gave a good kind of mix of baby boomer posts, Generation X, and then millennials. It also gave us a good sense of about a 50-50 split of male and female. So they did a good job at kind of giving a broad perspective on the analysis. And 500,000 social and digital posts are a lot to kind of look at. I thought this analysis was pretty good and something that I wanted to share to you guys, because I think understanding the nuances between generations, something that businesses often kind of fail to look at on a deep level. You guys that have followed me for a while, you guys know that I talk a lot about making sure that brands are not trying to be everything to everyone, because they risk kind of being nothing to nothing to nobody type of thing. So I'm all about kind of personalization and kind of taking a segmentation approach to the market, be that through products or kind of your marketing communications. But a lot of brands, quite honestly, don't do that. And this analysis was trying to set out to answer the question around, should you kind of do a one-size-fits-all approach, especially with functional CPG that could technically be applied to any of the generations, or does it make more sense to have a personalized approach and kind of segment to the different generational buying groups? So in this video, I'm going to kind of break down the baby boomers, the Generation X, and the millennials, and just kind of their nuances and just kind of what they're looking for from a functional CPG perspective. But before I do that, I just want to kind of address some of the macro numbers. You guys have heard me mention several times that the global market of functional CPG is growing, between 6 and 7%, depending on where you find your research at. And then from a U.S. perspective, different kind of surveys have said that about 75% of Americans, adult Americans, take or have taken recently a supplement. And from a generational kind of breakout, all of the generations are kind of between 80 and the low 70s. So there's not much variance on who's taking functional CPG and kind of the nutritional supplements. This analysis and just kind of surveys in general, they have been leaving out Generation Z, the newest generation, because the oldest Generation Z members are just getting to the age where they can quote unquote legally buy a supplement. If you guys look on the back of a label, it usually says 18 and over. So most research does kind of excludes them for that kind of reason. But let's kind of get into the nuances between the generations. I think this is going to be pretty valuable to you guys, regardless if you're a brand owner and you guys are looking to launch some different products or rebrand, or you're just an employee that works for one of these companies. This knowledge is the type of thing that just helps give you a good base to make meaningful suggestions when you're in a meeting or whatever. I've mentioned this on every video. My goal here is to add value to you guys. I don't want to waste your guys' time when you guys are watching me. I want to make sure you guys are getting value out of this. But before we get started and everything, shameless self-promotion, hit the thumbs up button, help me out on these videos. That helps this video get shared more organically through YouTube, and that helps me kind of get my message out a little bit more. So if you guys can do that, it would be greatly appreciated. But let's get into the nuances, and we'll start at baby boomers because I think that's where I was focusing this past week. So, and I also think that for the vast majority of the people that watch my videos, they probably are not really thinking about baby boomers as a viable market for their functional CPG product. What you'll actually find out if you do, start doing some research is that outside of kind of millennials, baby boomers are 100% driving, the functional CPG trends. And as individuals get older, especially in today's kind of world, their buying behaviors and habits actually become much younger than kind of your middle age. Why they're important is they actually control about 50% of the consumer spending in the United States. So it's a big chunk of change that they control on a day-to-day basis. Some other kind of misconceptions, I think, especially myself going into some of the deep research, was around just how much they use digital, use online, use social. They might use it a lot different than me as a millennial or other generations use these tools, but you'll find that they do a lot of research through kind of web searches or through websites. They also use social media apps. Primarily, they use kind of two more than the rest of them, and they tend not to have a ton of different social media platforms that they focus on, but they're focused mostly on like Facebook and YouTube, which for like advertisers and marketers of CPG products, those are great platforms to focus on. I mean, both of them have pretty good ad platforms, and obviously you can target baby boomers if they are using those. And I think I saw, about 70% of baby boomers have both a Facebook and a YouTube, or they watch a YouTube. They don't have a YouTube channel, but they watch YouTube. And from like a product perspective, what you'll find is generally they're seeking out products that are focused around skin and moisturizing, joint care. Eye care is becoming an extremely big category, like heart health, digestion, and then products geared around kind of brain and memory function. You'll see that baby boomers, they're not as picky around like the traditional caps and pills. They take a lot of them already, so they're not too worried about having to add some more to their regimen. And taste isn't as big of a driver to baby boomers. Now, from like a marketing perspective, baby boomers are looking for like positive messages, informative messages. They don't want to be told that they're old. They don't want to be, kind of they don't want that age thing thrown in their face. They are living longer. There's a kind of a term that's thrown around a lot of times with baby boomers and kind of aging generations around kind of like the longevity economy, about how there's a lot of pockets, specifically functional CPG, that are benefiting from baby boomers and humans kind of living a longer life and a more healthier life. From like an influencer marketing perspective, generally they're looking at these people more from like mass media perspectives. They still are focused on influence coming from television, or some of the celebrities that they're used to that are in their age range, that kind of live a healthy lifestyle. They look very healthy. Those usually are much stronger of an influence than some of the other generations looking at Instagram models or something like that. Now, to move into Generation X, the issue with Generation X for a lot of brands is it's kind of forgotten in kind of this three-headed monster. You have baby boomers and millennials that are kind of changing the landscape of CPG, and Generation X is just kind of in between, and a lot of people just tend to forget about them, unfortunately. But there are some nuances with Generation X that I think brands need to kind of look at. From like an online perspective, they do utilize online and social more than baby boomers, but not as much as millennials. And they tend to have more of a variety of platforms for CPG brands to market to. The products that they're kind of seeking are more geared towards addressing some of the middle-aged concerns or things that happen when you suddenly are not invincible anymore. I know for myself, I am 33 years old right now. I have noticed in the last several years that a lot of that Superman effect that I had before is just no longer there. And though I'm not a Generation X, I'm kind of an older millennial, I do already notice some of these things, so I can relate to Generation X by saying, they are looking for things to address kind of middle-age concerns. And one of those could be like kind of hormone optimization or weight management. They also were really focused on like plant-based protein, and thinking about supplements and functional CPG is kind of similar to food. And you'll kind of see that that's also happening with millennials, but this is where you could see things changing. Like you have baby boomers that are still okay with like, caps, powders, pills, and then Generation X is kind of more looking at these supplements as more food. And then from a marketing perspective, Generation X is kind of in the prime of parenting age, their careers. They are extremely busy, so they're looking for convenience, and that's where some of the functional foods and beverages kind of come into play. They're looking at, kind of taste being a big decider for what they do, and they want to make sure that they can utilize these products in an everyday application. From an influencer perspective, they're still kind of looking at these things. They're still looking at social influencers, mass media, celebrities. They're looking at this from more of an informational standpoint than entertaining or entertainment value. So though there's some crossover here that starts to happen, they're mostly still looking for influencers that are kind of more geared towards information and providing value to their lives. And then getting into my generation, the millennials, the one that seems to be the most elusive for CPG brands and ones that are often this is the generation that is often very polarizing from a perspective of other generations. It's that kind of love them or hate them type of thing. Millennials are the biggest generation. There is a large range of age groups with millennials. You have the youngest ones still kind of in college. You have the oldest ones like myself that are kind of hitting into the prime of their earning potential, starting families, doing those types of things. So there's a much bigger range with millennials than most people tend to think about. This is the target market for most functional CPG brands. This is the holy grail of kind of what they're looking for. It's important to kind of focus on if you are going to target them or go after them, make sure you are being extremely aggressive towards this target market, because it is the most competitive market. From an online usage perspective, we are the first digitally native generation. We use a ton of social media. We use a ton of digital apps. We are constantly in our phone. We're at this point where we're kind of shifting the world from, used to be kind of digital first. It's moving towards digital only, and then kind of this mobile first, and then kind of mobile only. We're moving a lot of those advancements across the whole, kind of population, regardless of generations, because millennials actually have been shown to kind of have the most influence of all of the generations of kind of changing things and having other generations jump on trends and things that we kind of foster. Now, from products, I think a lot of these trends are things that you guys see in the market now today. Natural ingredients, clean labels, transparent labels. Taste is paramount. Having a great tasting product and one that has, a very clean, transparent formula are just kind of the entry points now to get into the market. Those aren't differentiation points. Those are just entry points now. From like a product marketing perspective, I think the big one that they pointed to was around kind of the distrust of institutions from millennials. And I think a lot of that comes from, at least in my perspective, I was entering the job market right when the kind of the Great Recession happened. Banks and auto and housing and a lot of those things were kind of having a fallout. And because of that, subconsciously, consciously, we tend to look at these large legacy brands, large institutions, and we don't take what they're saying at face value. That's hurting a lot of these established legacy brands because of some of this conscious or subconscious that happened with that. Now, some of the younger millennials, they have never really seen a downturn or anything bad happening. So that's a little bit different, but I think at least for my segment, and ones that are kind of having the most buying power and influence in the market right now, that's a big factor that goes into all this. Also, like personalization, making sure that you're speaking directly to millennials is extremely important. Being that we're digitally, the first kind of digitally native brand, we're used to having a targeting aspect of ad. We're cutting the cord on our television. We're not used to like having these mass media messaging that's happening to us all the time. We have very highly targeted messages that are put to us hundreds of times a day. So if you are a brand, you need to make sure that you are doing that effectively. Also trends around like sustainability, both from like a product perspective, inputs and just kind of your packaging and all that. Also from like a corporate responsibility, do you stand behind what you're saying? Is there alignment and authenticity to your brand and your brand marketing, or is it just kind of you're utilizing it in a way to sell more? Millennials are kind of the first to call these things out and basically demonize brands that do that. Also looking at more natural ingredients, and I think that just comes around with just knowing transparency, clean labels, just a lot of those things need to be translated from the product to marketing communication. And then influencers, I think we kind of birthed influencers. We understand that influencers are a career. We understand that they are going to promote things. There's an entertainment value that we exchange for them promoting products. We expect them to be as authentic and transparent as they can be, but we also understand that there's a business involved with this. So we're not looking just informational at this point. We are understanding that there's an entertainment value and an exchange of value that's happening between them giving us entertainment and we having to hear some of their advertising pitches. But to kind of conclude this, you guys haven't noticed, there are a ton of different nuances that happen between the different buyer groups, generational buying group. And because of that reason, you need to make sure that you are targeting the specific buying group that you're looking at. Is that marketing? Is that product? Is that price, promotion? Is that everything? Everything should be matching through the whole cycle to kind of position yourself perfectly to attract the most amount of buyers that you can. But I think we'll end this topic here. I hope you guys got a ton of value out of this. I know I could have specifically broke this video up into each generation. I think for this first video, I think it's good just to kind of touch on these generations as a whole so you guys can see some of the differences. So if you got some value out of this video, as always, the only thing I ask in return is that you like this video, you subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not done that so far. If you guys do follow me on some of my social media, like the posts and comment, engage with me a little bit, share it if you can. Help me grow this community a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger, because the more value that I can add to the most amount of people is my goal here. But I want to thank you guys for taking a little bit of time out of your day. I know you guys could have spent that time anywhere, and I definitely appreciate you guys spending it with me. And I'll see you guys on the next one.